Hey guys, in this video we're going to talk about durability. This is Durability 101. You know, there's a lot of different things that go into measuring out durability, and there's several major things that we want to discuss today. And keep in mind, this is our opinion, but we've kind of discovered how this works. You can take the same car out and give it to several different people, and each one is going to have slightly different problems. In this video, we're going to try and explain why that is and what we can do to get more life out of our cars without spending everything we have in the bank. Check this out. All right, so let's get right into this with the main question. What is durability? Well, durability is how durable something can be and how tough can you make it versus, what you wind up with a lot of the time. And on the bench here, we've got quite a few things that have failed and things that can be seen as upgrades, which will make things a lot more durable. And that durability plays a role in how things happen in the field. On the bench, you can always sit and try and pick the best build for your car, but when you get out in the field, it's not always that way. Sometimes you build things strong in the wrong place, and it causes things inside to fail, and we're going to get into that right now. So what it is this right here, and we're not talking about any particular car here, this is just an example. But this one here is the Rival MT10, and this is arguably one of the toughest 10 scalers you can get, but it does need an upgrade or two to get there. It will take a lot of punishment before it fails. That one, if I remember correctly, that one's got a plastic chassis, and plastic chassis get kind of a bad rap, I think, because they think that the aluminum ones are going to be a lot stronger, but the plastic ones are going to fail more often. And this is a standard Arma plastic chassis off of one of their 3S vehicles. And these are super tough. I mean, they really take a pounding. They don't bend and stay. They'll flex and come back, but they do have a weak point. Right up front in this area, it's got the smallest connection points anywhere. This is the front end. And on the front end here, that's where you take all the impact. It takes a lot to break one, but generally when you lose a chassis, this is where you lose it. On this particular model. Now, a lot of them are built a lot similar to each other. However, the aluminum chassis cars, and this is off the Typhon, and this is a 6S chassis, if you take a look, that's bent really bad and it's twisted in the back. So the rear wheels don't sit evenly anymore, and this is common for this particular car. And you can do a few things to combat that on that type of vehicle. It's not about the Typhon. It's about the aluminum chassis and what you can do to beef it up so it holds better. Now, one, that's made out of stamped aluminum, so it's not very strong in the first place. However, they do make 7075 T6 aluminum ones to replace those, and they're a pretty good changeover most of the time, but you also have to manage the weight that goes with the changeover. You can use something like this. This is an aluminum chassis brace, and who builds it's not important. What is important is that the plastic ones that come with that car allow it to flex, and when you hit, it bends the chassis, but metal can bend and stay. Plastic can bend and flex back. That's the advantage to plastic to a certain extent. When you start getting into the larger cars, this is the Creighton 8S and the Losi DBXLE 2.0. Whew. And those two cars are right around 30 pounds. And they have a lot of inertia when they hit the ground. And they still have plastic parts, but look at the difference here. This is, well, let's go with the stock one here. This is a Creighton rear arm. This is stock, okay? Stock one, and I believe this is a version 4, but they're similar anyway. This is an X-Max arm, which is a bigger car. Look at the beef involved in that. Much bigger, much thicker. That's designed to handle the extra weight that goes with that car. The tires weigh more, the car itself weighs more, so the inertia of the vehicle is a lot higher than it is for this one. That's kind of what you have to keep in mind when you're thinking about what durability is and how it affects how you set your car up. Now, here at the studio, we have kind of a we have kind of an interesting way of looking at it, I think. Not everyone agrees with us, and that's fine. If what you're doing works for you, you're not doing it wrong. This is just what we find works for us. Now, when you go to build something like, let's take the laser nut here, for example. This is kind of a fragile vehicle right out of the box, and you have to do some upgrades to make it more durable, but you do gain weight each time you put something heavier on the car. The idea here is to make the arms flexible, make the steering links on the back flexible so they can flex with impact. Everything on the outside of the arms can be durable, and what that means is we have aluminum components out here because those don't need to flex. Those need to be strong. The arms need to flex to take up any kind of impact that you may have and not transfer all that energy into the inside of the vehicle, because once you get inside of this, now you've got the bulkhead, you've got right in here, you've got the differential housing. Everything that those arms connect to can be a problem when that inertia impact hits, and you can actually break things inside, not to mention the hinge pins that are direct connect from the arms to the parts in there. So if you keep an eye on where you want your flex to be, you can make it a lot more durable. So that being said, weight and speed are two key players in any vehicle's durability. The faster you make it, the more impact power it has. And if you go 25 miles an hour and say you have 30 pounds of impact power, and these numbers aren't accurate, it's just an example. If you have 30 pounds of impact, you figure 50 miles an hour, okay, now we have 60 pounds, but that's not the case. As you increase your speed, the impact is exponential. It gets a lot higher with impact. And I saw a video where they took a fleck of paint and they accelerated it to 5 miles per second. That's crazy fast. And they shot a replica of a satellite with it, which was about so big. And when that fleck of paint hit that satellite, there was nothing left but dust. That weighed nothing, but the speed to it, the speed that it traveled gave it so much more inertia and power that it destroyed that entire model of the satellite. The same thing applies to this on a much slower level, guys. But it's the same thing. The faster you go, the higher the impact. And it's not just double or triple. The faster you go, the more inertia you build. And keep in mind that it's not just the inertia of the vehicle. You've got the rotation of the tires, the rotation of the motor and the drive shafts, and all that gets energy as it cruises along. And you can't just suddenly stop that. Now, I want to get down into the insides of this for a second, because we covered the outside. Basically, you want anything that can impact to flex. So that's basically the arms and everything connected to them. But on the outside, you don't want the bearing housings and all that stuff to flex. You want those nice and strong. And on the inside, where the hinge pins are, good solid hinge pins are always a bonus, and metal contact points are always a great thing because you want that to be strong so it doesn't rip the insides of the car apart. Okay, so that's basically the layout for this. However, when you get past that, now we're talking inside and durability internally. Many times you'll hear people say, yeah, I blew a diff. I blew a diff. The center diff went out. The rear diff went out. I blew the front diff. Okay. There's a lot of power in the system, not just the motor, but once you get all those wheels spinning, if they're spinning fast, you can't grab onto them and stop them. They'll eat your fingers up before you get them stopped because there's so much inertia in there. Now the gears on these, let's see if I've got one here. I think I do. Okay, here we go. The gears on these are pretty small. Okay, and this is a 6S differential housing. And it's got pretty small teeth in here, and some have bigger and some are plastic. This one is metal, but it's only designed to carry the power that the vehicle was designed to take. You can shim them up and you can make them a little stronger, but at the same time, the teeth aren't very big in here, and it'll only take so much power before you blow one out. Keep in mind, this is mounted in a plastic housing, so there can be flex under the right load conditions. That being said, when you get up in the air with one of these and you're flying and you're trying to get the front end up or do a backflip or whatever it takes to get that back roll that you're looking for, you're going to come down hard on the nose, you throttle all the way up to get the rear end down. When you come into contact with the ground, guys, you need to be off the throttle. And the reason for that is all that inertia. If you gain 100% traction, depending on what you land on, it's going to shut down that entire internal system. And when it does, it's going to overload all those components. You can break drive cups, you can strip out differentials, you can break axles. All of that plays a role. I came down in a very awkward way the other day with the Traxxas sledge, and I landed front, but I was full pin when I hit the ground, and it shattered the left drive shaft in the front. It just tore that whole CV apart because the power that was put to it, and that's a really strong car, it overloaded the steel components. It's not just plastic that we're talking about. It definitely can overload all the steel components, including the center differential, which has pretty good teeth in here, and it does marry up to the pinion real nicely, but if impact hits hard, it can flex. Now, most of the time this won't do it, like especially in the ARMA vehicles where they're connected by a plate, and I believe I have that here as well. This is an older version, but it's still valid. So what you have here is a plate that connects the differential to the motor, and once you lock it in, and this will hold that differential solid in this side, once you lock it into this, it can't drift. Okay, it can't pull apart unless these screws come loose and allow it to shift. Now, the newer one has a slide system in it that locks it even better. This is an older one, but it's good for the example because this is something that should be in each car to keep the motor from drifting, because if the motor drifts over a little bit, it's going to eat the gears on the spur gear and you're going to wind up needing parts. And if you're looking at durability, if you unadjust something, is that really durability issue, or is that not being able to keep this tight? That's a different thing. So durability is when you're using something properly and it's well adjusted and doesn't hold up. An example would be, let's take this car for example. This is a Losi Triple XT. It's a two-wheel drive truggy, and we used to race these all the time, and they're a lot of fun, but take a look at that. Those are really light arms. I mean, this thing is super light. It weighs literally, it weighs almost nothing, and it's complete, ready to go. Drop a battery in it and pull a trigger, and it still doesn't weigh much. Now the thing is, it doesn't have as much impact force, but look how long the arms are. Okay, so these arms are pretty good size, and these wheels are pretty well maxed out for the weight that can be on these arms without causing failure. And still, if you hook one, notice there's no bumper on the front. Any front impact will just rip an arm off the car. Is that a durability issue? I mean, that would be a driver issue, wouldn't it? If you ran into something and broke it. Now, if it cartwheeled and tumbled in the yard and ripped it off, you still have to deal with the weight on the end of the arm. And that's the thing. And you hear people talk about, you got to try these tires, you got to try those tires, and that's okay. But when you swap tires, check the weight to the tire, because if you double the weight out here, the power against these hinge pins does more than double. It really gives it a lot of power against those arm parts and can cause the whole thing to fail because you have more weight out here than it's designed for. So let's take a second and talk about options for making things a little more pliable on the car. Now, since we have this on the bench, and we'll use this as an example, and if you watch the channel, you know I'm a fan of this stuff, but this is the stock arm for the Kraton, remember? These are RPM arms as a replacement for this, version 4, version 4, and with some modifications you can get these on the EXP and version 5 as well. Small modifications, not too difficult. However, if you like these, but you want them to be a bit more flexible, one of the popular answers to that on the internet is to use this. Now, this stuff, WD-40, has a tendency to soften plastic, and the idea is to soak them for a little while in that WD-40 mixture, and it'll make them a little more limber and less prone to snapping, which will give you just a little more pliability. Be careful while you use it, because some areas you want to keep their strength. But in the arms, if you use that in the arm area, it should help make things a bit more limber if you can't find more flexible arms. Now, here's the thing. On the MT10, this one has RPM arms on it, and once we put the RPM arms in place, it became a tank to play with. It doesn't matter where you want to go with it. It handles it quite nicely. We did break it one time when we ran it straight into a tree. Again, that was driver error, because on the front, the bumper only covers this much, and that's common in most RC cars. They don't necessarily come all the way out to protect the tires because it kind of ruins the aesthetic. And once you do that, who's going to buy a car that's ugly? You want to have one that looks cool too. This one has no bumper. This one has a pretty adequate bumper. This one is 1.25 inches wide. Everything else on the front is exposed arms. That also will play a role against durability because any impact is going to shatter those parts, especially at the speeds these cars travel. Now, if you take that and you look at what a lot of guys on the internet are doing, and I'm not saying they're wrong, if you're going to do what they do, just be ready to buy parts once in a while because it's a lot harder on them, but they put much bigger motors in them, they put much bigger batteries as far as cell count goes, they overvolt stuff. And they make it super fast. And yes, it's fantastic to see. And you watch the tires pie out and get really big. And it's fun to watch. But the stock components aren't designed to deal with that kind of power. And that's where we get into the next subject. Check this out. So let's get into the discussion about stock replacement or stock weight replacement versus overbuilt, building a tank that'll handle anything. And that is an option, but it does add a lot of weight to the vehicle. The problem with adding just weight to the vehicle is you add weight. Okay, that's pretty simple. Weight slows the vehicle down. You have to pull that weight around. It's going to cost you runtime. It's going to add heat to the motor, so you'll have to change your gearing a little bit. Once you do that, now you've got everything maxed out there. You're going a little bit faster, and you have more inertia with the extra weight. So now you need to beef it up a little bit so that everything is strong enough when you add more weight. It's kind of a vicious circle of adding and adding and adding until you get something that is way heavier than the stock stuff. Now, in our opinion, and like I say, this is just our opinion, guys, but in our opinion, stay as close to the factory weight as you can because that's what the vehicle was designed with. It was designed to handle that amount of weight, that size tire, with the length of the arms, to make it as tough as it can be. Now, they could make these bulletproof, and they really could. And here's an example of that. Again, this is the Triple XT, but remember these arms? Take a look at those one more time. Have a look at how thin and frail those are. Race car, not basher, race car. Okay, in a racing situation, light is everything because the less weight you move, the longer your batteries run, the more you can gear it up, the faster you can go. Okay, that's basic understanding on that. But when we take a look at this one, let's go ahead and do this. This is the Techno SCT 410.3, and these arms are solid. Look at that. These things are gnarly, super tough, but they're short. So they don't stick out as far. They don't have the big tire on the end. This is a pretty good sized tire, but it's in close. So in close, strong arm, it will still add all of the weight, the power, the impact into the hinge pins, but it doesn't stick out as far, so it doesn't have as much leverage. And that's the advantage to these. It doesn't really matter whether you get the Techno, whether you get, the Losi, whether you get the Traxxas. It doesn't matter too much. The short arms are super durable. Even the Arrma Centon 3S, really durable overall until you hook something in the arm at speed, then it's gonna break it. And add to that, if you beefcake one of these things out, which is adding all the components, the chassis, the arms, changing the arms out, changing everything, all of the hub carriers, changing all the shock towers, everything, and you're putting just the toughest stuff in there you can get, it's a good thing if you're going to go out and hit like the skate park or something like that, where you land on concrete all the time and it takes constant pounding. And that's cool if that's what you're into. We don't personally do that here, but it's still part of the sport, so I understand why everyone loves to do it. The problem being, if you take a car, let's just look at this one for example. This one here runs right around $900 when you get it complete out the door and it's ready to go. Then you upgrade things. Now we changed the chassis on that, but we put the EXB chassis on it instead of putting, say, an M2C or a Just Bash It one, because those are really super durable, and this one is simply the same type of chassis made out of the better aluminum, so it keeps the weight really similar. And that works for our application. It would probably fail at the skate park. Now the thing about that is, when you go and spend all this money, the weight you put into your car is pretty much the weight you're going to pull out of your wallet, because it's really a lot of money to throw at it. You got $900 in a car and you can easily put that much in upgrades into it, and then you change the motor, speed control, and amp it all up, and then the tires can't hold up because they swell up and pop So then you upgrade the tires, which adds more weight to the outside. Some people's answer to the arms is to put aluminum on there. And if that's what you're into, if you want a show truck that looks kick-ass and beautiful, aluminum arms really do look good. And they work in low impact situations. But if you stuff a car into something solid, it's always going to break, guys. It just is. With the aluminum arms, you're going to break internals. You're going to break the stuff that's harder to fix and more expensive than just swap an arm. Arms are supposed to break because that's supposed to be the weak point so you don't damage the car. Swap an arm. That's how that's supposed to work, at least our understanding of it. Now, these cars here, and that includes all of them, let's take a look for a second here now. This is a Typhon 6S, okay? Good example. This one weighs a lot. It has a 1/4 inch thick chassis on it. Weighs 3 times as much as the stock chassis, and you can feel it. If this ever hit you, it would hurt bad, and you'd be lucky if you could walk away without limping. Now, the stock one, we have a stock one right next to it here. This one has the stock chassis on it. See? But it's not stock. This one's been upgraded to the TLR chassis, which is 7075 T6 aluminum, but it's thinner. This is milled out on the inside to keep the weight down. You still have the stronger aluminum in it. You can literally feel the difference in just the chassis change. This one doesn't quite fly as far as the other one because the inertia off the ramp for the thicker chassis gives you more distance. Takes more energy to get it up to speed. It also takes longer to get it to stop because of that added weight. When you're shooting for distance, that 1/4 inch thick chassis will take whatever impact you give it, and it will get you a little more distance because of the weight involved. So here at the channel, we are fully aware of what each car is designed to do, and it doesn't matter whether it's a race car, a basher, whatever, even if it's a crawler, we're going to run them the way we're going to run them because that's what we're into, but that doesn't mean we're running them the way they're supposed to be run. And the durability tests are kind of skewed on that because we're running them outside what they're supposed to be run at. However, it does help expose some weak points within the car, and that's part of the reason we do it. The other part is we do reckless abandon here. We want to see what's going to happen. Knowing what the cars are designed to do is part of the durability assessment that we take into consideration when we're thinking about durability. When you're looking at a track situation, so let's split this up into 3 segments. I think I have 3, so let's give this a try. The first segment is track. So if you're going to go out and race and you're in a track situation, light is king. It just is. If you can get your car nice and light, it requires less power to move it. And it's more nimble, but it does cost you traction without the weight to hold the tires down. Then you have to get into tire compounds and all that to hook that weight up. The lighter it is, the longer it'll run and the better it'll handle. Set your suspension up for whatever track conditions you have, but keep it as light as you can legally keep it so that you can be competitive. So if you're into a racing situation, generally light rules the day. Now, if you're into a bashing situation, it's different altogether because weight equals power as far as being able to get enough beef on the arms and enough beef in the chassis and enough weight to hold these bigger tires down, because without the weight, here's a good example. We have the Sen Racing Reaper on one side and we have the X-Max on the other side, and there's a significant change in weight between the two. We went ahead and mounted X-Max tires on the Reaper and took it out to check it out. Now, the Reaper is a 6S car, but it is stupid fast. The X-Max is a heavy vehicle, and it's 8S. That notwithstanding, there's more weight in the X-Max. Even with gyros in both machines, the X-Max outperforms the Reaper every time. And it's not, I'm not trying to trash on the Reaper because it's a blast. It's a fun car to drive. But performance versus performance, build of the car, same tires, the weight helps get the X-Max grounded better. So it handles better with that weight. So in bashing, weight that it's designed with, like the X-Max is naturally heavier out of the box, that's the weight it's designed to have. With the weight at the design that they built the car with, it should handle as good as it's going to handle under the power loads that it's given And all of the internals are designed with that power load in mind. So when you get into a great big vehicle, everything is bigger. It has more weight, which makes the car more grounded. The tires are built to handle that weight. The arms are built to handle the tire weight, and so on. And it makes a much bigger difference as you change. So when you go from racing to bashing, the cars aren't anything alike. And if you take an example would be if you took a full-on race car and you took a basher and put the right wheels and tires on it and went out to race them, the lighter car should win. The reason for that is the more weight you get, the harder it is to get around the corner with it because that weight pulls against the car as it goes around the corner. So you got to fight the weight in every corner. It's going to pull you wider when you come into it. It will give you more hookup so you can go straight faster. But this will beat you in the corners every time because it's lighter, doesn't have to carry that weight around. Now, before we get into the last segment on this, I want to show you a couple of things that have failed over time with some of these cars, and it's really simple. This is the shock absorber in the front for the Sun Racing Reaper, and that chassis allows this to bottom all the way out without the chassis hitting the ground. So any overly heavy inertia that you put on the landings, like jumping, it has a plastic part right here. I don't know if you can see that. It's right here. And that is the capture ring at the end that keeps all the oil in the piston when it functions. Just that impact destroyed that because it's just a little piece of plastic and there's a lot of weight in that car when they should have put an aluminum cap on it here. Now, yes, jumping was a problem, but putting a weak plastic part where an aluminum would have solved the problem to start with, this lands in the durability category because this shock just isn't very durable for what it was designed to do. So that one would count in durability. Also, we have a spur gear here, and this one is stripped all the way out. Now, these things do wear, and we're aware of that, and how we run them makes a difference. This one's plastic. Plastic spur gears run against the pinion. The pinion is connected directly to the shaft on the motor, and the motor creates a lot of heat. So when you run these battery after battery, that pinion heats up. There's friction in the teeth when it makes contact with this, plus the heat it gets out of the motor, which can start to melt the plastic. So if you run it continually at high amperage, which is big time pull on the throttle, you're going to burn these out. It's just what's going to happen because plastic does that kind of thing. That also is a durability issue you can change by putting a metal one in. This is the design, and this is an ARMA part. This is the design for the pillow ball setup for the steering. And right up in here, this isn't all that strong. So when you land askew, it can pop those balls out, but it cracks this along the way. These become useless really fast when that happens. These upgrade to aluminum because these can be hard parts and it'll prevent that failure. Still, that wasn't designed quite right, and there are other models out there besides ARMA that don't have that problem, so that's a durability issue against ARMA on that one. If you take a look at this, this is a Techno Sea Carrier for the front end, and it's really small plastic here and there, and it does deal with quite a bit of load. We've shattered these before on many different cars, not just the Techno. This could be made of a little tougher material. We wound up looking to find aluminum ones. We haven't found them yet, so we had to replace them with the stock ones. It took a lot of pounding to break it, but this was the breakable part. And then there's this. This is the center drive shaft for the Centon 3S, and we've had several of these go bad. This is supposed to be one item. It's not. This melted clear out. Look at the melt in that. Can you see that? This melted all the way out because a rock got in there one time, destroyed one. One of the wires got down in there, and as this rotates, it creates heat, melts the plastic, snaps it in half. Not very durable. If there's a clearance issue, because the motor sits right next to this, if there's a clearance issue, this should be made out of tougher material, or it should have a shield over it to prevent that kind of damage. That also is a durability issue. And wheels and tires. This is a brand new set for the Rival MT10 because tires fail quite frequently, and a lot of that has to do with overspinning. And what that means is When you hit the ground and you're on your side, this tire's touching the ground, you hit the throttle, this one overspins. Well, all the power that was supposed to go to this one goes to that one. This is designed to spin at whatever speed the car's gonna go. But when you lock one wheel down, this gets double the speed. So if you're on your side or you're on your top and you're trying to get it to self-right, no matter what your car, and one touches the ground, the other one will overspin, and that's when you generally lose tires. Here at the channel, if it goes upside down, we're walking for it, because we've lost a lot of tires, especially on the X-Max and some of the bigger cars, because we tried to self-right and all that stuff, and it's just super hard on the tires. I'm not going to fault that one for durability, because they do what they're designed to do under normal conditions, but when you double the speed of something, you take it beyond its design regiment, and that's just not going to hold up. And now for the segment I know I'm going to hear about in the comments, but one of the real issues is the part you can't change in the car to make it more durable. You can only improve that part, and that comes down to the driver. So there are many things that you can learn from these cars, and there are many forces that work on them that are predictable. Physics are physics, no matter whether it's scale or full size, physics still apply. So as you begin your trek into doing this kind of thing, you'll have to understand the car and what makes it run. And driver style makes a giant difference in how that works. We talked briefly about the differentials and how coming down under power can destroy what's inside. The same thing can apply to the rest of driving style. One thing that I've noticed that is a real thing on these is if you have a gyro system and you get off the ground good, turn the gyro off. Because what happens is, now we're going to pretend this is a four-wheel drive rig. This was nice and light, so I want to show you with this one. So the tires are spinning, right? And then you get up in the air, the gyro doesn't know what's going on, and it starts doing this with the tires. Well, there's a lot of inertia in these being driven. So these are spinning this way. If you've ever held a bicycle wheel while it's spinning, you know it's hard to control that force. As these turn, the body moves. So it does this in the air because these are waggling under power, or even if they're not under power, that inertia is still working. The problem with that is it'll waggle left, it'll waggle right, it'll turn left, and it will land right on the side. And it happens on any scale. It doesn't matter, well, from 10th scale up. I haven't tried it on the smaller ones, but what happens is that waggle effect gets you down on the side of your car. It really looks like that car will never jump right. Turn the gyro off. Then it only gets the impact that you give it, and it will allow you to land true. The only thing the car will do is what you tell it to do. So if it waggles in the air, stop playing with the steering and just work the throttle to get the nose down or up or whatever. That's one good way to combat that particular issue. But if you don't have the skill set yet, and none of us start with the skills, it takes time to learn. And if you don't have the skill set yet, but you buy a car that's capable of 50 miles an hour, you're going to panic, or maybe not, but the panic happens. You're watching your car do something cool and you forget all about the radio and you watch. Bang, that runs into something. Now it's broken. You go, well, this isn't very durable. Well, it is in the right situation. These are designed to be run, but not bumped into stuff super hard. They're not designed to be slammed into a fire hydrant. They're designed to be durable under normal conditions, and the car can be durable. This one here, I like using that XXX as an example, because if you run it the way it's designed, this is a tough truck. You get out of pocket and it's broken. Just how it goes. Hence, you want to get cars that are designed for what you're going to do. That helps a lot. So if you panic and you get out of pocket, you're buying parts. If you don't know how to control it in the air and you come down wrong, the odds are you're going to be buying parts, because these things only handle certain types of impact unless you put $1,000 into it, or let's go with $500 into it to beef everything up. You still should probably work on your skills at driving to make sure that you do land it most of the time the way it's supposed to. When you get close to an obstacle, you inherently slow down and go around the obstacle instead of trying to power through it. All that plays a part, and it's a real thing for these, and that skill set takes time. it does. What I recommend on that is if you're going to be in the air at all, get a ramp at home, start slow, small battery, get it up in the air, play with it a little bit at nice slow speeds. Play with the brakes, play with the throttle, play with the steering. See what it does. When you feel confident that your reflexes are there, put a little bigger battery in it or gear it up or whatever, give it that extra bit. Now the nice thing is you can switch to 75% on the radio if you have an ARMA vehicle or a Spectrum powered one. And that will allow you to do the same type of thing. Next set, up a little farther out. Do it until it becomes second nature in your hand. You might have to burn a battery or two doing it, but once you get the reflexes to that, turn it up again and see if you can take it. When you get into full throttle, it's a different animal than it will be at 50 or 75%. It's gonna be a lot more touchy in the air. Keep in mind, each type of car handles differently in the air, tire size, inertia, weight, it all plays a role. So if, let's say you get really good with the MT10 and I hand you the X-Max, you're gonna have problems with the X-Max until you get it down because it doesn't handle anything like the MT10 in the air. So it's little things like that. Take your time, work your way into it, get your skills down, and you'll watch how much it improves the durability of what you're driving because you're not so hard on the car. Now, I'm not blaming anyone for this, it's just the way it goes. I know for a fact that when I hand a car to somebody to check it out, if their skill level isn't there, I'll probably be buying parts. However, if I hand it to somebody that's skilled, most of the time it comes back unbroken because their reflexes keep them out of trouble. So there you go, guys. I hope the video was helpful. You know, Durability 101, we've been thinking about this one for a while, and there's a few things that people seem to overlook when it comes to rating how their cars hold up. Knowing when it's driver error and knowing when it's actually the car can help you decipher how to build your car the way you want it to be built. You want to throw the money at it to make it super strong? Cool. If you want to keep as close to the stock weight as possible but make it super tough, that's also cool, and it's completely up to you. So if you haven't already, don't forget to subscribe, like, and share. It's awesome when you do, and don't forget that notification bell to stay informed of upcoming videos like this one. You know, the 101 series is a lot of fun to do, and we really like helping where we can. If you guys have anything you can add to this, whether you think we're right or wrong, please feel free to leave it in the comments down below and help others along the way. Hey guys, I'm AJ with AJ Jam Studios saying, keep bashing, guys.